In this audiovisual essay, I will be discussing a video game entitled Cuphead by Studio MDHR. I'll be conducting a semiotic analysis of the visual and musical signs in the introduction sequence entitled Don't Deal with the Devil, comparing classical music and its connotations in Cuphead, as well as smaller significant music in Cuphead, with a major focus on the soundtrack by Maddigan. All to prove that Cuphead's aesthetic supports a 1930s cartoon animation style. Before I begin, I do need to give some context on the game itself. Cuphead is a boss rush run-and-gun game in the vein of Contra. It contains a bit of platforming with a whole lot of enthralling cartoon visuals and snazzy music. You play as Cuphead, a cup who got too greedy while playing a casino game of dice and lost his soul to the devil. To keep your soul, you're charged with collecting the soul contracts of all the other debtors of the devil. The opening to Cuphead expertly signifies to the player what the game is about. It engages the player by being the foundation for the style of art and animation we see for the rest of the game. Considering the two central figures first, the denotative meaning is two anthropomorphic, human-like beings who have affixed to the top of their bodies a cup with a straw coming out. They stand atop round tokens which are coloured in the same manner as their figures, red and blue. The stripes on the side of the round objects depict casino tokens, commonly used in our society to gamble. A personal trait of being human is intelligence. This is an assumption made from my own personal experience as a human. Some characteristics of human intelligence that our central figures show include their faces, which depict an upward smirk akin to smiling. Smiling connotates happiness and joy. The large circles on the two figures' heads look very much like human eyes. Traditionally, eyes are the focus when looking at the silhouette of a character or person. Both characters casually swing their bodies to the tempo of the music. Because they're human-like, they are smiling, and they are dancing, we can assume that they are feeling genuine happiness. They both are wearing a form of material over their crotch, and both are wearing large brown objects at the bottom of their figure. We can attribute both objects as shorts and shoes from personal experience wearing clothes ourselves. If we can infer that they are anthropomorphic characters, then we can assume that the cups on top of their bodies are heads. Next, since they are anthropomorphic cups, we as a social ideology need to assume a gender. We can assume that both are male because of the proportions of their face, but perhaps also because of a history of male depictions in media that describe figures with no hair and no cleavage as masculine. The dominant ideology of masculinity is reaffirmed. The two figures are indexical to 1930s cartoon animal characters who bear anthropomorphic traits. One such character was first created in 1928, and he was named Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse is first shown in the 1928 cartoon Steamboat Willie. In this animation, a white-skinned animal that can be connotated as an anthropomorphic mouse is shown dancing to the tempo of the music, smiling and wearing the same clothing as the two central figures shown in the Cuphead introduction sequence. The way in which the words Cuphead is drawn and the kaleidoscope of colour which is aimed towards the two central characters also denotes common practice for Walt Disney cartoons. Cartoons which make us think and feel joy, happiness, and are filled with anthropomorphic characters. The music entitled Don't Deal with the Devil is played during the introduction sequence and is in the style of a barbershop quartet. A barbershop vocal harmony, 1930s to present, is a style of a cappella without accompaniment, close harmony. It is characterised by consonant, which is tonally correct, 4-part chords for every melody note, in a predominantly homophonic or one melody line texture. The close harmony is considered very skillful because it requires a lot of practice. The song that is sung in the introduction sequence follows all these conventions. The high-flowing, tightly knit harmonies, which are accompanied by the warm analog microphone fuzz, connotates joy and a general cheerfulness when associated with these types of cartoons. Traditionally, music in 1930s cartoons had a soundtrack which was recorded, the times of which were precisely noted, and the cartoon is carefully remade in time with the music. In this case, Cuphead and Mugman are dancing and in time with the music, further endorsing the 1930s cartoon style. It could be assumed that the characters on the screen are singing the tune, even if their mouths aren't moving. They are, after all, cartoon characters. The information that is depicted in the music is drastically more significant to the plot of the game. The player is asked to listen to the lyrics as it delivers a summarised plot.
Well, Cuphead and his pal Mugman, they like to roll the dice. By chance they came upon a devil's game, and gosh, they paid the price.
These first 3 lines talk about a conflict in the game and deliver the premise. Using the word gosh is also quite significant. Starting in the 1930s, the motion picture production code, promptly known as the Hays Code, was the first attempt at introducing censorship through the US. A particular rule said that no picture shall be produced that will lower the moral standards of those who see it. Hence, the sympathy of the audience should never be thrown to the side of the crime, wrongdoing, evil, or sin. This meant words like gosh were used instead of what we would use as swear words like damn it or bloody. The lyrics conform to the ideology of the 1930s.
Paid the price, and now they're fighting for their lives on a mission fraught with dread. And if they proceed but don't succeed, well, the devil will take their heads.
The next 3 lines talk about how the player will actually engage with the game, and the reasons for why they are fighting. Finally, the devil will take their heads. With these lyrics, it establishes that the devil is indeed the villain. In old cartoons of the 1930s post-era, it was common practice to include music that signified to the audience classical music. Because certain melodies and themes in classical music were so well known, they were perfect ways to directly signify a certain feeling to the audience. In Cuphead, there are many references to classical music and well-known old-school game music. Each reference is there to make the player feel an emotion, which is learned from years of listening to classic works being referenced in the media. An example of classic music used in classic cartoons from the 1930s is In the Hall of the Mountain King by Edvard Grieg, which is played in a classic cartoon entitled Hell's Bells to elicit a feeling of building anticipation and drama. Classic tunes in Cuphead included Ride of the Valkyries, a piece written by Richard Wagner for the opera Die Valkyrie. It evokes a sense of incoming dread and overall dramatic flair. This is played in the song A Reaction. It elicits these same feelings. The Liberty Bell March, John Philip Sousa, a style of march that is used very prominently in Cuphead for march band style composition. It sounds very similar to the Inkwell 2 overworld composition. It is declamatory and upbeat, less jazz and funk and more optimism. It gives the player a feeling of going in the right direction and to continue forward with their journey, not to give up. Tracks Rise of the Ooze, Clipjoint Calamity and Pyramid Peril include muted horn solos. The sound the trumpet makes when muted is also possible to create with the human voice. So to me, it depicts the human voice. The mellow tones of the trumpet make it sound melancholy and full of sorrow. It is musically interesting to hear, and it is a stark contrast to the upbeat and mostly happy jazz band themes. The muted sound the trumpet makes perfectly conforms to a jazz sound. The theremin is used to evoke an alien feeling to the mausoleum level. The upward high squeaking sounds that the theremin makes is haunting. This level has ghosts in it, and the alien haunting feeling conforms to our expectations. Furthermore, the legendary ghost in the mausoleum levels has her own theme. The marimba is played in a high register with lots of semiquavers. This connotates images of bones rattling together, which conforms to the ideal of her being someone who has died. Often in media, the sound of bones rattling is the sound of a skeleton, which, if brought back to life, would make a rattling sound. To conclude, Cuphead's aesthetic supports a 1930s character animation style. It does this by creating an introduction sequence that contains 2 central characters that mimic the character Mickey Mouse, who was first created in 1928. The music in the introduction is in the style of a barbershop quartet, who saw prominence in the 1930s. Classical music is used in Cuphead to connotate certain dramatic feelings, for example the Ride of the Valkyries. The theremin was used to elicit an alien haunting feeling, and was used prominently in the 1930s to 50s to elicit the same feeling. Cuphead's immensely expressive and exaggerated gameplay greatly benefits the 1930s art style and sat in the top 10 charts of jazz records on Billboard.com. 3 weeks after its release, it remains within the top 30. It's a perfect representation of what music can bring to the game and how much effect it can have.